Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to another edition of SpraynPray1000's The Verdict. I am SpraynPray1000 and today we're going to talk about the latest open world game from Ubisoft, Watch Dogs 2, sequel to Watch Dogs from back in 2014. Essentially, this game adapts the majority of the gameplay elements from its predecessor and evolves them to be better, but there's a few things in this review I kind of want to hit on. So let's just start right away with perhaps the most conflicting part of the game, which is simultaneously good and bad, the story. The story of Watch Dogs 2 is essentially almost very loosely connected to the first game. Events are referenced, but you no longer play as the main character, Aiden Pierce, from the first game. Instead, you play as Marcus Holloway, a youthful, spry young man in the Bay Area who's trying to join DedSec so he can begin his fight against Bloom and essentially do things his own way. And right from the get-go, the tonality of the story shifts from dark, dreary, very depressing, which really trademarked, the first Watch Dogs game, into very lighthearted, very silly, very conflicting. Sometimes the story does take a turn for the dark, but typically the feeling of the story is this is for fun. This is a very upbeat, nothing too dreary and depressing kind of a game. And for the most part, the game handles it well about maybe 60 to 70% of the time. It's an obvious shift in tone that they really, really wanted to drive home, that this game is not, going to be super serious like the last one. And I'm fine with that. And the reason why is because it's different, it's slightly varied, it's more interesting to see this. But on the flip side, when the game does start to take negative and very serious issues and everything, it doesn't really hold up well because the game essentially has to go back to being a very upbeat sort of style of game. So for instance, there's several points in the game where you're doing missions and they're really just like mess around missions. Like there's nothing serious, no one's gonna die, etc., etc. And all the characters are joking around, throwing stuff out there as Marcus does these missions. Marcus essentially being the only field operative they have, with you controlling him and whatnot. You have to do the brunt of the work. And it's really nice to hear all this dialogue between them because it makes you feel like they are a group of friends. They trust each other, which, given the fact that the story kind of just literally throws them face to face for the first time, it really kind of raises a few questions as to how much they really trust you, but whatever, right? The whole point of this game is you're in with this group of cool people, and they do feel like real people. They don't just feel like the typical support characters in a video game. Oh, you got your tech dude who loves tech, you got your aesthetic person, you got your pilot. They don't feel like that. They really do feel like each character here, with the exception of one, and if you've watched the playthrough or maybe even played the game, you'll have noticed it yourself. They all feel like they genuinely have a strong presence in the story. And unfortunately, though, the game does toggle between that and sometimes having very supercilious things. So for instance, a very tragic event happens to Marcus, right? A very tragic loss is incurred by him. So within, I want to say, 5 minutes of this loss happening, it's basically forgotten. It's turned into a pretext for another let's go here and fuck with people mission. And I don't really like that. I think that that's kind of, I don't want to say disrespectful, to the character, but at the same time, it's kind of like, there's nothing wrong with having a serious tone in a game if it's done well. If there's a serious event, there's nothing wrong with them saying, hey, this is, this event happened, this is real messed up, and just, letting that story ride. They just refuse to have any almost sort of serious consequential events in this game. There's lots of events that happen that could be serious, could be life altering, and they just kind of sweep it under the rug. And I really wish that this story had more of an impact, because what I'll give the first game is, while I thought the protagonist was all right in my opinion, the story felt like it was leaving an impact, like there was actually some loss involved, like there was some deeper, heavier weight to the story, which is what made it believable. This game, while it, the characters are, I guess, relatable, it's very situational with how believable it is, because the story never takes that kind of hard hit. And the characters are, while yeah, they're young, they're youthful, they're whatever, they really just kind of feel weird because most people who play these games are not going to be in this sort of techie hipster kind of circle. And so while I get that they kind of want to establish that, I think this game at some points ham-fistedly tries to shove it down your throat that, yeah, these guys are super uber techies and they're totally part of this cool crew, called DedSec, and they're hacking the world and stuff like that. And while what they do is certainly, far from wimpy and, just running their mouths, it's kind of, again, the tonality of this game is too lighthearted for me to seriously take them as a real sort of major presence. But I guess maybe we're just exploring the human element. But that kind of is what bothered me throughout the story, is that big plot points that should have a lot of weight get swept under the rug. Normal plot points just kind of feel too unbelievable. And the only other thing that I'll say about some plot lines, this is not every plot line in the game, I want to elaborate on that. Some plot lines just feel unresolved, and by that I mean there's some side missions that feel like they're going to open up into a whole other, amount of stuff, but they're just left unfinished in the story. I mean, there's a side mission where you're tracking down some old hacker who started using his code again, and essentially it ends with "don't follow me anymore," and there's no further missions after that, and then it just ends, and that's the end of the mission. Another mission has a returning guest star from Watch Dogs 1, and in the mission nothing really happens. You go over a few places, you never really get to really do much. It's just kind of like here's a quick cutscene with the dude and that's it. That sort of deal could have been a little bit more. I wish the side missions, despite how nicely done they are, where they feel like they're actually main missions that you want to do because they feel like they're main missions, they unfortunately don't really go anywhere. They just kind of are like little teases sometimes, and I'm a little torn about that because I feel they could have done a lot more with that. But since we're moving into gameplay, the gameplay of this game is a fairly simple sort of open free roam kind of a deal. You as Marcus have various ways that you can accomplish your goals. You can, for instance, go in guns blazing. Of course, Marcus is not a bullet sponge, so if you do this option, you need to be careful. You can do a variety of things, such as stealth. You can use stealth takedowns in order to accomplish your objective. You can use stealth, I want to say, in every mission in this game with relative ease, as opposed to Watch Dogs 1, where it was, more advantageous to kind of maybe take out a few dudes and then just shoot the rest. This game really prides itself on saying, hey, you can play this game from start to finish in stealth without a doubt. Now, at the time of this review, there is no replayability for the missions. Same grimace I had about Watch Dogs 1. However, they did say that they were going to add it, but I just want to specify that at the time of the review, there's no replayability for missions. So therefore, I can't sit here and say, well, it's very good because it makes you want to go back and replay missions and, figure out, okay, I did 90% of this stealthy, but then I got busted. How can I do this 100% stealthy? Really just for fun. There's no reward per se for doing it. And it's just a for fun metric. It's just, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And it works. It's exciting because you know what? You don't have to use guns. You never have to kill anyone in this game, essentially. Even to when it makes things a little silly, like you're supposed to assassinate a dude and you only tase him. And, he's obviously not dead because you only tased him. But whatever, right? The whole point of this game is if you are so morally against killing people, just as a challenge to yourself, like maybe you're a Hitman player or something, this game lets you do that, and that is a definite improvement over the first game, and it's something I really, really liked about the game, and it's, again, something I would consider going back to and playing through the missions again when they add that potential, to see exactly how can I do this mission perfect stealth. And it's not like there's one way to do most of these missions stealth. There's a huge amount of ways. You can do it non-lethally stealthy, where you actually go in and knock everyone out. You can hack into various devices, such as a forklift, have the forklift pick up a gas canister, drive the gas canister over to a bunch of dudes, and blow them all up. They brought back the ambush style mission, which I think is really, really cool, where you have to ambush a bunch of dudes having essentially a swap meet where they are exchanging technology or drugs or something like that. You essentially have full control over that. Marcus gets a RC jumper and a drone, similar to, Ghost Recon and Splinter Cell, where you can use to recon the area, mark enemies, see different things, activate, hack various things. Additionally, the hacking mechanic has been updated. It's not just that when you hack something, it has a specified mechanic that it does, and that's it. Rather, you can hack things, and there's multiple different things you can do. You can summon cops or gang members to kill an enemy. You can you can summon a whole bunch. You can make their phone vibrate. You can summon your own car to drive into people. You can summon other cars to drive into people. When you're having high-speed chases, which I notably realize there are a lot less of in this game, as compared to the first game, you can have a bunch of guys driving behind you. You can have their cars blow up when you detonate a steam pipe underneath the ground. You can have traffic accidents occur by hacking the street light. You can hack into cars and make them crash into walls, which is a reasonably strong ability. I wish it was a little more powerful, because it seems like it doesn't really help too much. That being said, the car chases kind of do edge on annoying, because the enemies simply respawn in front of you and then just rejoin the chase. Something I always really did not like about these open world style games is that enemies will respawn in front of you on a two-way road, and obviously you can't avoid them coming at you, which is a little bit silly. Getting around the city, and by the way, everything I just mentioned is a positive. Like, I love everything about that except for the last part about, enemies respawning in front of you. All of that is great because it allows for variety. You can set things, you can hack things and set them to detonate whenever someone walks past them. You can do that with both lethal and non-lethal items. Marcus himself can do melee takedowns. He has a taser right from the start of the game, which is pretty cool. And yeah, the guns blazing route exists. You can shoot people, whatever. To be honest, this game kind of doesn't need to rely on the fact that it has combat. In fact, you could almost really forego most of the gun aspect, Even though Marcus can turn into the typical, I don't want to say damage sponge, but he can turn into the typical third-person shooter, and it works pretty well. I don't think you could swap shoulders in this game. I think that's really my only complaint. I might be wrong. I might be forgetting. But, no, I mean, essentially, the game itself allows you to freely do this stuff. But there's no, again, since there's no reward, it's almost easier just to do the stealth. I mean, and that's good, because I feel like the essence of Watch Dogs is really captured in this game, more so than the first game. Because unlike the first game, this game allows you to do full stealth, which is essentially what the idea is that you're not exactly supposed to go in there, shoot everyone up, type into a keyboard, and walk out, and then that's the mission, like GTA or something. Essentially, they really kind of captured that essence very well, and that's what I like about Watch Dogs 2. Now, getting around the city is very, very fun. There's a lot of stuff to see, a lot of stuff to do. Like the first Watch Dogs, there's landmarks you can explore and essentially check into, as it would be. There's various activities you can do. The only thing I will say is I do miss some of the older missions, such as the fixer contracts and the gang hideouts and whatnot. I feel like gangs are in this game for the most part, for really almost no real reason per se. They're just kind of in there. Whatever, it is what it is. I kind of do miss that. The only thing, again, is that the gameplay, thankfully, of this game is the main meat of it, which is what I like about it. It's as opposed to, anything else. But I do wish that the story had a stronger presence. It really just kind of feels like, DedSec, and I guess this is overall, I'm getting ready to end this. DedSec more or less kind of feels like they're just a bunch of pranksters a bit, and that ties in with the whole lack of gravity for 90% of the game, is that it really feels like a lot of what they do is just to fuck with people, for simple vengeance and stuff, as opposed to any kind of, realistic change the world type deal until the end of the game, and the game kind of suffers from a nice narrative backbone. I feel that Watch Dogs 1 had a nice narrative backbone from start to finish, from all 5 acts. And even though I always say that acts 1 to 3 are the best, at least for the whole game, there was a narrative, an evolving story that went from, okay, here's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, and they're all related to each other. This game kind of suffers from, okay, there's an overall goal that we're going to do. Now here's 5 unrelated things that are going to happen, and, none of them are going to be super serious. None of them are going to bleed over into each other for the most part. And then that's going to be it. That's the game. End of the game. And that to me is kind of, I think that could be done better. I think that again, the worst part of this game is the way the story is handled. Not per se the story itself as a whole, but the way the story is handled. And I really, I don't want to say the game self-parodies itself, but I feel like the game kind of acknowledges it could be done better. But, what do I know, right? I just feel like there's certain things that could be done better, but overall Watch Dogs 2 is an improvement on Watch Dogs 1 in almost every regard except for the story. So what would I give Watch Dogs 2? Watch Dogs 2, I think, goes above and beyond in a lot of ways and kind of shirks the duty in a lot of other ways. So I would give Watch Dogs 2 an 88 out of 100. And the reason why is because most of the points of this game are lost because of the story. I feel like a good 10% of 10 of those points are lost because of the story. The other points are really just lost because of minor things. Like, as I said, cops and other dudes will respawn in front of you. It can be difficult to evade them sometimes. The glitchiness sometimes rears its ugly head. There's a couple of really silly things that prevent this game from getting those extra 2 points, like, frame rate dipping and fluctuating and stuff like that. But again, overall, if they could fix up the story for Watch Dogs 3, make these side missions that, some of them are great, some of them are really nice. Others are kind of, half, I don't want to say half-assed, but half-baked, like, oh, hey, there's this real hacker dude, he's gunning for us. Plotline gets dropped. I want to see what they're going to do with that. I want to see if Marcus is even going to be the protagonist of the next game. Because for all I know, he could be completely unrelated. I want there to be more gravity in the story, because I really feel this game suffers from a lack of gravity and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's going to be it for Watch Dogs 2's verdict. Overall, a great experience. If you're looking for a game that is open world but not really a GTA clone, I totally recommend this game. I feel that it's easy enough to jump into. I feel that the stealth aspect is handled very, very well. The combat aspect is also there if that's your thing. And, assuming they keep with their promise of adding replayable missions, I think that will really contribute to letting the game have a lot of replayability, because there's already a lot of cool stuff to do in it. The multiplayer, I'll say the same thing about it. I said before, hit or miss. I like the idea of the cat or mouse type of gameplay. I like that you can turn it off if you just want to have a purely single-player experience. So while it is fun, I again still state that it's not really the main meat of this game. Hunting down someone who's hacking you, trying to basically play hide and seek. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff to be done, but again, the main meat of this game is accruing followers for DedSec and following the story, which this game does for the most part really, really well. Alright, and that is it, and I will see you guys next time.